We're going to get started. If anyone still needs to take a seat, there's some. We can pull more out if we need to, but you all look good. Okay. So thank you all for coming tonight. Melissa Pandolf has served 20 years in the United States military, is the mother of 4 kids and a dog, and is now an author. Her book, The Journey for Mama's Babies, chronicles the length of the Pandolf's efforts to adopt 4 siblings from Russia. It has been called touching, inspirational, and heartwarming. Please join me in welcoming author Melissa Pandolf.
Hoorah!
It's really exciting to be here, so thank you, Lauren and Stephen and all the staff here at the Huntington Book Revue. Can everybody hear me? Because I'd rather not use the mic. I think 4 kids, I kind of got the yelling part down. But it is really cool to see my name at the bottom of a book. It is a big accomplishment that I'm proud of. But my job title right now, and the one that I'm most proud of, is mom to my 4 children, and of course wife to Doug. But even before I had that job title, there was just me. There was Melissa. And I think to help you understand where some of my thoughts were with this book and why I had the feelings that I had in this book, it would be better if you understood a little bit about me. And then, again, it would just help you understand where I was when I call it my previous life, before this. So I'll talk about that first. I was born and raised here in Huntington. I actually graduated Whitman in 1992. And some old Whitman guys back there. But I was raised by my parents, and my parents were the best role models for me because my parents actually, they were both workers, but they worked opposite shifts. So I always had one parent available to me. And so from a young age, I always knew that that's what I wanted because I grew up in a very secure and stable home, knowing that they were always available. When I was real young, my dad is the one that was home with me, so that explains, being raised by a Marine, why I'm so determined and hard-headed sometimes. But again, I really did have that good foundation, and I knew as I got older, I just wanted to be a stay-at-home mom and a good wife and be a homemaker. But I also had to fill the gap between growing up and finding that husband. So after I graduated from Whitman, I went to SUNY Farmingdale and pursued a degree in early childhood education. But I quickly then realized that college at that time just wasn't for me. And I wasn't getting good grades, and I was just kind of antsy. I wanted to see what else was out there in the world. So I did the next logical thing, and I gave my mom her first gray hair and joined the Air Force. And I joined the Air Force and left in a very short period of time, so they didn't really have time to understand what was going on or what I was doing. But, I got on my plane and left for San Antonio. After I graduated from boot camp, I went off to the School of Aerospace Medicine, which is also in San Antonio, and I was trained as a flight medic. And that is, back then it was a great career field because my job was to take care of all of our air crew, our pilots, our navigators, and their families. And wherever our air crews went, the medics went with them. And if we were told to stay behind, then we took care of their families. So it was a prestigious job back then. But my first assignment was overseas. So for 2 years, as a young adult, I spent overseas traveling. And I had wonderful experiences over there. I traveled all over mainland Europe and went on some good military trips, flew in all kinds of aircraft. I flew in C-130s, KC-135s, the helicopters, and I even had the opportunity to work for NASA. And I went on a space shuttle mission to Zaragoza, Spain for a period of time. So that was cool, working alongside some astronauts. I had a good time with that. But in the back of my head, I always knew that, I'm kind of biding my time here, having a lot of fun, biding my time, because eventually I wanted to get back to the States and get married and start a family. So when my orders came down to leave Lakenheath, they actually sent me to Japan. And I said, whoa, I don't want to go there because I want to go back stateside, and I didn't want to extend my enlistment any longer than I already had. So they sent me back to the States, and I got stationed at McGuire Air Force Base. And while I was stationed there, I continued my job in flight medicine and had some great experiences there as well. And they also put me in charge of some programs, which was a lot of fun. I was a supervisor. I had a lot of responsibilities. But again, I knew this wasn't what I really wanted to do, even though I was pretty good at my job. So I was transitioning off of active duty, coming back to Long Island, and I started to get a little nervous. I was like, ooh, I have all this independence and I had all these experiences. I was like, I wasn't sure if I was really ready to leave the military altogether. So as I came back to Long Island, I decided to join the Air Force Reserves. And I stayed in the reserves for about a year, and I deployed with the reserves to the Middle East, but this was a pre-9/11 world. So the world was fairly calm when I was doing that. But I spent some time in the Middle East, but when I came back, right away they were like, okay, you know, when are you going back on your next trip? And I got nervous, and I was like, no, I'm kind of done with this. I really just want to be back in school and have my full-time job and start my family. So I left the reserves and I left the military altogether. I took a job working full-time as a nanny right up the street here in Farmingdale, in Melville, and that was a great job for me. I was taking care of kids, and it's what I wanted. I went back to school for liberal arts at Farmingdale, but again, I was like, wow, okay, I'm kind of in a rut now because I have this great full-time job, and I'm in school, and life is good, but I miss kind of the excitement. So I wound up purchasing a home out in Patchogue, so that, as my dad said, I can stand on my own 2 feet before I pursued this life of happiness that I wanted afterwards. So I bought a house in Patchogue, and while I was living out there, I realized, wow, there's a whole Air Force base out there. Never knew anything about it. But the 106 Rescue Wing is actually out there in West Hampton, and I, of course, spoke to the recruiters and got recruited back into the Air National Guard. And that was pretty cool. At the same time that I joined the Air National Guard is when I met Doug. My first weekend there is actually the first weekend that I met Doug. So I got all my medical credentials back and started working with the Air National Guard. And eventually, a year after I met Doug, we got married. And a little while after that, Doug and I realized that we wanted to start a family. And I was like, all right, this is good, but now I'm in a post-9/11 world where things are a little more hectic, and there was a time where I was deployed down to Ground Zero, and I realized, like, the world just isn't the same anymore, and I had to figure something out, because if I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom in a post-9/11 world, it could be a little tricky sometimes. So I didn't want to give up my military career, and I didn't want to give up what my dream always was, so I decided to cross-train into the financial management field. So while I was at West Hampton, I cross-trained into financial management, which allowed me to stay in the military and yet have a less deployable position so I can be home with my family. And after being in finance for about 7 years, I got bored again. And an opportunity came up at McGuire Air Force Base, where my friend Sandra is recruited me back into the medical field. So currently today I work, I'm over 20 years now, and I'm working in the medical field again at McGuire Air Force Base, which sounds a little difficult, but it's 1 weekend a month I go away, and it's a good thing I go away once a month, because that gave me the opportunity to actually write my book. You know, I had one night a month to get going and get this book done, as well as another part-time job overnight that I was working in. But this book actually started out as, it's a journal that I had kept when I was adopting. Doug and I were going through the adoption process, and the journal starts out with me being at Kennedy Airport and waiting to board our first flight to go overseas to meet these 3 children. And all we knew was that there were 2 girls and a boy, and we knew their years of birth. We didn't have pictures, we had no medical history, we didn't know anything. And I was like, wow, this is kind of, you know, anxiety moment, and it was just crazy. So I just started writing how Doug and I were feeling at that time, and then also picking on Doug because he hates to travel, and here I got him going all the way over to Russia. So I had to write down, you know, how Doug was pinging over everything and not having coffee. But the journal started from that point, and it went clear through the adoption of Jeremy, who's my youngest son, who's actually a second adoption. Because when we were adopting the 3, Jeremy was born at the tail end of that, so we were forced to have a second adoption and go back for Jeremy. So I kept this journal for 3 years, chronological series of events that we went through and all of our emotions. And I always told Doug, you know, this will be a great book for the kids. I really wanted the kids to know, you know, how they became my kids and how much they're loved and wanted. And then it's evident in the book, and with the feelings that I had in this journal, I really wanted them to know that. So my book actually started out as my working title was called Mama's Babies, and I was writing it for my 3 children because the 3 older ones came home as a group. So I wrote it for them, and then I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. because Jeremy was a whole separate adoption. I'm gonna have a second book, and I'm gonna call it Jeremy's Journey. And I'm like, wow, this is pretty cool. You know, I got 2 books now. You know, look at me, a little writer that I am. But what happened is as I was transitioning from writing Mama's Babies and trying to end it, and then start Jeremy's book, more emotions and stuff started coming out of me and I started to remember more what it was like, the transition going from having no kids to 3 kids, and then adjusting with my 3 kids. And these emotions and these feelings started coming out of me, and I wasn't quite sure where they were going, so I just decided just to keep writing. So as I'm writing, I'm realizing I had some really nasty thoughts and a really ugly time for me. Every book that I had read about adoption when I was going through, I felt that they were more how-to books. It was how to adopt, the process, the paperwork, and all these things that are going on, and how children coming home from institutions, they have institutional care issues, they have delays, they have fetal alcohol syndrome, and reactive attachment disorder, and oppositional defiant disorder, and all these things. I read about the children, and I knew exactly how to help them. I knew what signs and symptoms to look for. I knew how to help these kids, and if I didn't know how, I knew how to research it. What I didn't understand was, why was I falling apart? I had everything I wanted. I had a great husband. I had these 3 great kids. I had a son waiting for me overseas, waiting for me to bring him home, and I was yelling and kicking and screaming and eating and drinking, and I was a mess, and it wasn't easy for me to understand what was going on. And then one day I woke up, and I knew I hit bottom, and Doug knew all this was going on, but he knew I would figure it out on my own. And I looked at the mirror and I said, this has got to stop. This isn't me. This isn't who I want to be. So from that day on, I went online and I started entering questions. I just adopted 3 kids from Russia. Why am I a disaster? Why am I hitting rock bottom? What is my problem? Why do I have all these awful thoughts and feelings? And after doing some research, way down at the bottom of a Google page, there's this thing called post-adoption depression. And I went, are you serious? Really? There's a name to how I was feeling, and I'm really not as crazy as what some people might have thought I was, or even that I thought I was. You know, postpartum depression is an open topic. People know the signs and symptoms, and if you see a friend going through it or displaying it, you say something. Well, I was displaying basically all the same things inside and at home, but not so much outwardly, because I was afraid of what people would think of me. I was afraid of repercussions of, well, you're saying all these things, you know, what did you expect? You just adopted 3 kids, or, oh, they're from Russia, they always have problems, and all these things, and I was afraid, you know, to say everything. So when I wrote this book, I had to I pretty much came to a crossroads, and I said, I'm either going to put this all out there for the public, or I'm just going to bury it and pretend it didn't happen and just go with my 2 books. And the end result is, I decide to keep it in there, because I know that there's no way that I went through. I'm the only one in the world that ever went through all these things. Yet it's never talked about. Nobody tells me how to help me. They just tell me how to help my kids. And I think this book, by bridging the gap between Jeremy's Journey and Mama's Babies, and making it the journey for Mama's Babies, it encompasses my entire 3-year period. And my hope is that when you read it, if you haven't read it, or you did read it, that you understand that I have a fierce determination to do right by my children, to be the best person that I can be. And I think by putting all the dark stuff that is in there, I think I can help other people, and I can maybe open up the lines of communication with the world of adoption, because adoption is so much more than just signing papers and getting children. It's a family affair. And also in my book, you're going to read my mom's chapter that she wrote from my mom's point of view, and what it's like, because adoption didn't just affect me, it affected my entire family. You know, everybody had their own views and feelings of what adoption is. And I think by me being as open and honest as I was in this book, that people understand more about what it is, and really what adoptive parents go through. And then you also realize that adoptive parents and birth parents, we're all the same, because there's post-adoption depression, there's postpartum depression. You know, my first pregnancy was pretty easy. My second pregnancy, not so much. Well, my first adoption was pretty easy. My second one, not so much. And you'll see a lot of, you know, parallels that go along with it. And so I hope that you enjoy my book. I hope you learn something from my book. I hope you understand that it's more than just an adoption story. It is about my journey of bringing home my children, but it's also, you know, Doug and I's journey through life and just through our transition. So, you know, I hope we all come together more, and we feel free to talk about adoption more and everything that goes along with it. Yeah, so I thank you all for coming, and I hope you enjoyed my story, and I hope you enjoyed the book. To answer any questions or entertain comments if anybody has any. Maybe, yes?
Hi, Sandra.
Hi, Sandra.
I have a question for you. How did you feel with your military career and everything that you went through emotionally, physically, the depression that you went through, how it would affect your military career? I know it's a big thing nowadays with, you know, people just going to war and dealing with that kind of emotions, but for you, how did you feel?
When I was going through everything, I'm still in the military, and I was obviously in the military then. I had, I hold a security clearance. I was dealing with people's finances. I was dealing with the government's money. A health technician. I take care of people medically. I think I never said anything because I was afraid it would have, I don't know that, I was afraid that it's going to affect my military career, but the way people look at you. I mean, you're trusting me to do the right thing, and while the military, they have all these programs, they have a lot of great things out there, it's still a little hard because you're afraid. They're like, well, how are we going to trust her to deploy and put her in a situation if she's admitting that she has some type of mental health issue, or, you know, however you want to categorize it or put it, but it's not easy to look in the mirror and say, I have to fix myself, or something needs to be done. And from a military standpoint, now it doesn't bother me as much. I think just because maybe I have over 20 years in and it doesn't matter, or, you know, I realize that, you know, it's okay. It's okay to say you need help, and I think we're too hard on ourselves. And I think we just need to let people help us, because most of us have a lot of people to help us, and it's just hard to ask for it. But, you know, hopefully more people, when they read the book, will understand more and see more signs and symptoms and bring it up. So it's not like you're coming out and having to expose yourself without fear of repercussions. Thanks. Anybody else? Hi.
Hey, Melissa, how you doing?
Good.
Great job tonight.
Thank you.
Just a comment and a question. Comment first is that I wish this book was available 15 years ago when my wife and I adopted our 2 children. And I was just wondering if this has become bedtime reading for your kids, or have your older kids read the book yet? And what do they know your experience?
My daughters have both read it. They can comment if they want. But I think they learned a few things. They, you know, do you want to answer or no? She's like, no. But she told me, she said she feels sad for me because she sees all the turmoil and things that we went through. We were originally given a referral for 2 children, and we lost that referral. And in the book, I call that chapter a miscarriage, because it is a similar. It's not physical, but it is a similar concept that I went through, that a woman would go through had she actually had a physical miscarriage. So my daughters that did read it, they have a better understanding. And I think they truly, you know, when you're adopted, it's hard to feel, or from everything I read, I should say, it's hard to feel that you're truly wanted and loved. And I think after reading my story, without me telling them, because they were able to absorb it and read it at their own pace, and they truly feel that security that I hope that they really have. So, thanks. Anybody else? Oh, hi.
Curious, outside of your husband, your family supportive? Were they resistant?
Oh yeah, my dad and my mom. I mean, even today, because I'm still in the military, I was on a trip through September and October. I was away for several weeks, and when I tell my husband or my parents, hey, I got a military trip, I gotta go, they just say, okay, we'll pick up the pieces. It's not like next year I'll be away for 4 months. And you know, I just call before I even call my husband, I just call my parents, you know, mainly my dad over here. But, you know, I just text him or whatever, and I'm like, I got a trip, I'll be gone this date to this date. And he's like, all right, got it covered, you know. And I have an amazing support system. You know, my husband, he picks up the pieces wherever, you know, there's some laying out. I mean, we really are partners, you know, because I can't do anything. Before, when we were going through the adoption process, it was pretty much me and Doug. My parents, everybody tried to understand, and they supported us 100%. My parents flew to Moscow to bring the children home with us because I was afraid to bring 3 kids home by myself. I was like, I'm pretty good with kids, but they don't understand me. They don't speak English, and they were older. Julia was almost 5, Ksenia was turning 3, and Zachary was 13 months. So I needed the support, you know. So yeah, I'm lucky to have my family. Yeah. Thank you. Hi.
I'm looking forward to reading it and I work with your mom. One question I have that I just was wondering, have any children at a point in their age been able to chronicle their feelings that might give us something maybe close to another book? Have they been doing in journal?
They haven't been keeping a journal, but they ask questions as they arise with them. The topic of adoption in our family from day one, it's always been there, all the terminology is there. As they're getting older, especially my daughters, the terminology's always been there. They're starting to process it and they understand what it all means, and it's all coming, you know, even the past couple of years, it's all coming to a full circle where like, whoa, I understand. And I think they ask questions through everything, and I think they adapt well, and they're doing well with it because it's always been an open topic in our home. There's never been any secrets, and as they ask me things, I present, you know, whether it's a picture of their mom that they're looking for or anything like that. I just present it as they ask because I feel if they're asking, they're ready for it. Otherwise, they wouldn't be asking. They do write letters to their mom, and they know we have a shoebox that we keep the letters in for her because I don't want to send them overseas, even though I have an address for her. I'm not sure if it's current, and they know I don't want them to send letters off and then maybe not get a response because we don't know why we're not getting a response. Did she move? You know, so for them, I think they chronological their feelings and stuff in these letters, which I don't read. They asked me to read. I said I don't. That's between you and her, and I let it ride that way. I'm right, wrong, or indifferent. I just do what I feel is right at the time and answer to the best that I can and hope for the best. You know, so far it's working out for me. So, anybody else?
That's good.
Okay. Well, thank you again for coming.
Get another round of hand. So we're going to have Melissa move to this table over here. If anyone wants to get their book signed, we can do it right over here. If you need to purchase a book still, they're available at the front registers. And that's it. Thank you all for coming.
Thank
Hope you had a good
you.
time.